things in a little bit here. You know, slow things down, have a little bit more fun. We're going to go right to Iran. Iran has agreed to talk with the U.S., Russia, China, France, Britain, and Germany to settle their tensions with Israel. Israel says, all right, but on the condition that Tehran's not going to be able to turn uranium into bomb fuel. What do you think? Sounds reasonable. Not going to happen. I want to bring in two gentlemen that know exactly what's going on. Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, he is the former Undersecretary of Defense during the Bush administration. Erick Stakelbeck, he is a GBTV contributor and the author of The Terrorist Next Door. Okay. So we're going to meet. We're going to get with the UN, and we're going to meet, and we're going to talk. And if that doesn't work, we might issue a letter or something. Haven't I seen this movie before, General?
You sure have, Glenn. In fact, all they're doing is stalling. If you wanted to stop an Israeli strike, can you think of a better way than going to the UN and saying, no, let's bring the world together and let's talk? This is nothing more than a delaying tactic. They will not slow down on their program. They're going to continue building a bomb.
Well, I mean, it honestly, it goes to exactly a prediction that I said, I think in 2006 or 7, when I said, there will come a time when the world will be on the verge of peace. So we're going to we'll solve it. And then those Israelis will come and they'll strike and it'll be Israel's fault.
Yeah. But don't worry, President Obama says he's not bluffing now, Glenn. So everything's going to be okay.
Oh, he's not bluffing?
He's not bluffing. Okay, he really means it this time.
So this time he's not bluffing. That means he's coming out and shooting straight, that he's on their side, or what? I don't.
Exactly. When you have to reassure your enemies that you mean business, you're not bluffing, you're probably bluffing. I think that's rule number one. So look, I think at the end of the day, Glenn, I was at Bibi Netanyahu's AIPAC speech the other night in D.C., and a forceful speech. And basically he laid the groundwork. Look, we're going to do it. This is why we're going to do it, why Israel is going to strike Iran's nuclear weapons facilities. When I left the building that night, Glenn, I talked to a few different people. We said, look, obviously he's going to do it. The only question is when. It seems like the timetable.
Well, the White House says it's spring. I mean, General, have we ever done this to an ally before?
No, when Leon Panetta made that pronouncement, the March, April, May timeframe that they would strike, I was shocked by it. And I must tell you that to do that to an ally is unprecedented in U.S. history, I think. We would never expose what we knew about an ally's intentions. But I think it reflects sort of the attitude of the administration that they want to delay this as long as they can, particularly until after the election.
Okay. How far away do you think Iran is?
Well, according to American estimates, according to Leon Panetta, our own defense secretary, Iran may have a nuclear weapon by the end of this year. That's our own administration, which does not want to take action. So when they're even saying that Iran is close, I believe they are very, very close.
General?
I have a different view, Glenn. I believe that Iran has a nuclear warhead now. No, that's going to shock a lot of people. But they've been working for 25 years, and they've had the assistance of North Korea as well as the Russians. You don't work for 25 years without succeeding in the development of a warhead. What they don't have is they don't have the ability yet to match that to a delivery system, primarily a missile, an intercontinental ballistic missile. But I can't give you the facts and details, but I think that they have a weapon now. Even if they don't, the estimates range in the ballpark of enough material to build from 1.5 to 4 nuclear warheads right now, just based on what they've already done. So as far as I'm concerned, I agree with Erick. I think that Netanyahu laid the marker down. He has made his decision. I think that that red line is approaching very quickly. And regardless of these discussions and talks and negotiations with the United Nations and the Europeans, Israel is left with no choice.
Yeah, and Glenn, we've talked about time and time again on this show. 2012 is the year of reckoning. This is it. This is when it all hits the fan.
Well, I mean, the 12th Imam, I mean, here's the conundrum the Iranians are in. They've said that 2012 is the year that the 12th Imam returns.
That's
now,
right.
I don't believe in the 12th Imam. You may not believe in the 12th Imam. But people over here will say, oh, well, they don't believe in it either. They're just telling their people. Well, hang on. If they're telling their people that this is the year that he returns, and they've said, I've spoken to him. I've counseled with him, right? So the 12th Imam is counseling with me, and he told me this is the year he comes back. And the only way he can come back is to be wash the world in blood. You get to New Year's Eve, and you're in 2013. Now, if the media is right and the experts are right, oh, they don't believe that. They're just telling the people because the people believe that. They have no credibility. So which is it? Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. The world has to be in bloodshed and chaos for the Mahdi or the Messiah to return. And I agree with
But as a war
what you
gamer,
just said.
help me out. How does a politician, let's say he doesn't believe it. Well, he doesn't believe it. But he's telling them that I've met with the Mahdi. How does he have any credibility the next year when the Mahdi doesn't come?
Well, he doesn't. Obviously, he doesn't.
So that makes him even more desperate.
Listen to this, though, guys. That hasn't, in a way, that hasn't deterred them, the Muslim world in general, for the past 60 years, because part of their theology is Israel is a blot. It should not be there. It should not exist. It should not be in the heart of the Muslim world. Yet time and time again, the Israelis defeat them against overwhelming odds. So what is Allah doing here? Why do we keep losing to these Zionists? So as much as they lack credibility because their prophecies don't come true, they're stubborn and they're going to keep going at it,
So give me scenarios here of what happens to the Middle East and the world.
I think that I'd be shocked, Glenn, by the end of this year if Israel doesn't strike. And I say that because, look, if Obama gets reelected, my gosh, he will have no constraints in a second term. He will bare his fangs against Israel, and all of the venom will come back. There will be no restrainer. He'll make it impossible for Israel to act in a second term. So they have to do it before the election. I think, look, the Middle East...
Do you agree with that, General?
Yeah, I do agree with that. And to answer your question with regards to what happens, I think that there's a reign of terror that will be unleashed on Israel coming out of South Lebanon from Hezbollah as well as Hamas out of the Gaza Strip. With 200,000 rockets and missiles, they will fire everything they have on Israel. So the Israelis are going to then have to address those two targets. I think that they'll try to shut down the Straits of Hormuz, which will jack gas prices up. I think the rising cost of oil.
Hang on just a second. Let me just say, study has just come out and said if the Straits of Hormuz is closed, oil prices $440 per barrel if it's the same as it was, if the same kind of conditions are present as the OPEC oil crisis back in the 70s. So it's $440 a barrel. That puts gasoline between $10 and $15 a gallon.
Well, they can't shut the Straits of Hormuz, but they can certainly impede the flow there. The U.S. Navy will reopen that. But it doesn't matter. It's still going to raise oil prices, off the scale, and it's going to be a world economic crisis as a result of that.
I think Netanyahu made a good point the other night at his AIPAC speech. We're talking about gas and oil prices. He said, look, yes, they will rise if a war breaks out in the Middle East. But if Iran gets the bomb and blackmails OPEC and sets the price of oil globally, they're going to rise even more. Iran wielding a nuclear weapon is a gun to the Saudis' head and all those Gulf sheikhs to their heads, saying this is going to be the global price of oil. We're setting the market price.
Remember that the movements over in the Arab, this was the year of the dictator. 2011 was the year of the dictator. 2012 is the year of the kings.
Yep.
Right.
That's Saudi Arabia, that's Jordan. So anybody who is even halfway friendly, and I don't think Saudi Arabia is friendly, they're not a friend of ours. Oh. But they're at least more friendly than Iran is. And that means they're out of the picture. Mm-hmm. And they hate Iran. That's some balance of power there. If this is the year of the kings where they go bye-bye, we're in trouble there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to see a new episode, the next level of the Arab Spring, I think, coming soon. And as you said, this is a year of the kings. That's the whole Gulf region. That's Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. They're the next targets.
Can I ask both of you guys something? When I was at the Vatican 3 weeks ago, I was standing in a room, and see if you have that picture, Tiffany, where the map is there. And I'm standing in the room, and I'm talking to these cardinals and these bishops and archbishops, and we're all having a conversation about the world. And nobody speaks English except me. And I'm trying to understand through a translator what everybody is saying. And I talk about how worried I am about the whole situation in Europe economically. And we start to have a conversation, and there's that map. See behind me is this map. And it was this map that turned the key, and we talked about it. They said, this is about the Mediterranean. This is about the Mediterranean. That's what this is really all about. This map has the Mediterranean up towards the top, and they said, look at all the countries around the Mediterranean. Name the countries that are in chaos, in revolution, or in financial collapse. Mm-hmm. It's Spain, it's Portugal, it's Greece, Italy. It's all about that. Yeah. It's all about the control of the Mediterranean. Whoever controls the Mediterranean controls everything.
And remember, that was the Ottoman Empire.
Yes.
That was the caliphate in the time of the Ottomans. And that's what they see coming back.
Okay. So let's break this down. First of all, what do you think happens if Israel strikes here in America? What happens?
Two things. I think I'd be shocked if there weren't at least attempts on the U.S. mainland via Iran, Hezbollah. Definitely, I think, against American targets in Latin America, possibly in Europe. Absolutely Jewish and Israeli targets worldwide. They'll be targeted. I'd be surprised if there weren't some attempts here on U.S. soil. We had the blueprint a few months ago, Glenn, in Washington, D.C., the Iranian plot to assassinate Saudi-Israeli diplomats. So I think against Obama's will, we may be pulled into this.
Have you heard about a plot to blow up the nation's capital with the House of Representatives and the Senate?
3 weeks ago, we had that very plot.
Yeah.
And it was a young jihadist, a Moroccan illegal immigrant, in a van on his way to the Capitol with what he thought was a van packed full of explosives. It was an FBI sting. He was thwarted, thank God. But the thing that stuck out to me, guys, is there was about 3 hours coverage that night in the mainstream media. Then they just switched to Whitney Houston's funeral for the rest of the weekend. A guy was going to blow up the U.S. Capitol with both the House and the Senate inside, and it got about 3 hours of mainstream media news.
That's why I asked you that way. Have you heard about that plot? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing that that has happened and been thwarted, and nobody says anything about it. We have a situation with our FBI and our DOJ. We're being set up for failure. We're being set up for more than failure. We are detaching 100% from common sense, and we are plugging right into radicalism. We have gone from a country that just doesn't have any common sense to either our government is suicidal or they're part of it. Because now they're changing everything. Either of you want to take this on, what they're changing with the DOJ and the FBI standards?
On the 8th of February, Robert Mueller, the FBI director, had a meeting with Muslim organizations, one of which was the Islamic Society of North America, a criminal organization, by the way, as declared in the 2008 Holy Land Foundation trial. Criminal organization. He met with them. And he promised them that they would be able to edit any future training curricula for FBI agents with regard to terrorism, and that they would be able to have a say-so in who actually does that training. Now, that was targeted at two men, John Guandolo and Steve Coughlin, who have been training not only federal but local law enforcement people on terrorism and the realities of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. It was targeted at them. And now they'll no longer be able to give that training because they speak the truth.
And, you know, basically what we have is the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's not just us saying it, these groups that General Boykin is talking about, that were in a meeting with the director of our FBI, they're named in the Muslim Brotherhood's own document as, quote, our organizations. These are Muslim Brotherhood front groups, clearly, according to the Brotherhood itself, yet they are advising our government on a chunk of our counterterrorism strategy. This is the definition of the fox guarding the henhouse.
And they removed roughly 1,000 documents from the counterterrorism training at the demand of these people that Mueller met with.
What does that mean?
Well, documents that they found offensive that were part of the curricula for the training of federal law enforcement officers, particularly FBI.
That the Brotherhood found offensive.
The Brotherhood found it offensive, so they were removed.
Do we know what the documents were?
I don't, but I suspect it's available.
Yeah. They were Islamophobic, apparently, according to the Muslim Brotherhood, who is moderate and worthy of our dialogue, of course, according to the Obama administration.
Yeah. How much of what's happening with Iran is coming, and the hatred for Israel and everything else, is being knowingly put into our system through Iran, through the Muslim Brotherhood, into our White House? How much of this is knowingly being allowed to happen?
A lot of people do not believe that Sunnis and Shias will cooperate. Nothing could be further from the truth. Iran is very much right in the middle of the Muslim Brotherhood's thrust to bring Sharia into America.
A lot of people think that communists and Islamists won't cooperate. They do. We've seen it. Occupy Wall Street. We've seen it.
Exactly right. So my answer is Iran has a great deal of influence over what's happening in America today through the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, I mean, when these Brotherhood leaders and officials are advising this White House on its Middle East policy, they're saying, look, you need to take a more even-handed approach to Israel and the Palestinians. And the Obama administration is listening very closely. Real quick, guys, just backing it up to when Iran hits Israel's nuclear facilities. Very doom and gloom, as usual. We're talking about the repercussions. But here is, in a way, a positive slant. Look, at the end of the day, if Israel does this the right way, they could set back Iran's nuclear weapons program, say, 3 to 5 years, number one. Number two, they could humiliate the Iranian regime and weaken them, possibly leave them ripe for the Iranian people to once again take to the streets. They could smash Hamas and Hezbollah once and for all. Because if Hamas and Hezbollah, if there's going to be a war, Israel might as well go all in and just eliminate Hamas and Hezbollah and possibly Assad in Syria.
You've laid the groundwork, though. It's not just, remember, you have to wash the world in blood, not just Israel. You have to wash the world in blood. The minute they do that, and the minute Al Jazeera broadcasts that propaganda, and with the help of Russia, broadcast that propaganda all over the world, it will ignite intentionally riots in the streets. You will have Occupy Wall Street joined with the members of Hamas and Hezbollah. You will have the Al-Qaeda members or any radicals just doing, it's an engine start, I believe. It's an engine start, and it will set the world on fire.
It's coming.
Here's what's really kind of funny about this whole thing, because the Saudis and all the other Gulf region countries there, the leadership of those countries will be behind closed doors high-fiving each other because they want Israel to hit Iran. But publicly, they will condemn Israel, and there will be riots in places like Bahrain and Saudi Arabia.
In also Europe, Paris, London, Germany.
You can't tell me. I mean, let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to ask you two questions. One, with the amount of anti-Semitism that is happening around the world right now, if Israel strikes, it spikes gas to $8 a gallon. Let's be friendly, $8 a gallon. Because there's significant unrest there. Economies collapse. You immediately, that all governments need somebody to blame. The easy one historically is the Jew.
Right.
So there's no way that it doesn't go into massive chaos, because this time It's different. This time it could cause economic collapse. Right. Hang on, let's pick it up there, and I'd like to get your response on that when we come back. I want to talk to two gentlemen that I really respect a great deal, because they say it like it is, and to heck with the consequences. We have we have 5 hours in God's time on the earth. Make it home with honor. What we're saying now is not said. It sounds kooky because it's not said anyplace. Nobody in mainstream media. Do you know of anybody in mainstream media that's doing this? No. Okay. So you tell your friends and your neighbors that this is what's coming, and they'll say, if that was going to happen, how come I don't hear about it? Let's take it a step further, because we've already said that all of us agree that Israel will strike. Israel will then be blamed for whatever the fallout is. The Saudis and everybody else will secretly high-five each other, but they will blame Israel, that there will be coordinated and uncoordinated attacks all around the world blaming Israel and on the Jews. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's not just about Israel for these people. It's about the Jewish people, whether they live in Tel Aviv or Toronto. It's about the Jews. And Glenn, I'll predict right here that when Israel strikes Iran's nuclear weapons facilities, you will see open attacks against Jews in Europe. That's not being alarmist.
I'll go further than that. I think you see them here too, and in Canada.
Yeah.
The Muslim communities in the West are so radicalized. And in late 2008, early 2009, if you remember the cast-lead operation, when Israel made an incursion into Gaza to take out Hamas, we saw massive rallies throughout Europe. In Britain, they actually tried to storm a Jewish neighborhood. This was 4 years ago.
I remember that.
The temperatures have flared even more now. And when Israel strikes, Jews around the world need to be on alert.
And I believe, you know, about 10 years ago, I said, there's going to come a time, we're developing a perfect storm, where we've handled all of these problems before, but never as a globe have we handled all of them at once and had no leadership. There's no leadership globally. So this thing is going to spiral out of control. And I said, we're headed for this perfect economic and political and war storm. And when it's all locking in and all the digits are lining up, that's when our enemies will say, go, now, 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 now. And they won't be coordinating with each other. They'll just all know now's the time. When Israel strikes, you have the world on the brink of economic collapse. Every single Muslim organization, you know, radicalized, nasty organization, is going to say, go get them. Muslim radicals all over the world will do it without any instruction, but I believe the leaders like Ahmadinejad and everything else will say, Muslims, stand up. Now is the time to unite. The caliphate can be done, and they'll do everything they can to take it. Does that sound crazy?
No. Doesn't sound crazy at all, Glenn. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And you need to remind your viewers that we have terrorist cells in America. We have sleeper cells in America. We know that. And as you've talked before on this program, our southern borders are so porous, and we know there's an Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and Hezbollah connection with the drug cartels. They brought sleeper cells into America. They will come alive, and we will see attacks, as Erick said earlier. We'll see attacks right here in America.
Can you guys help me out? There's this, I'm trying to remember. Just a few weeks ago, there were 20 Chinese and 20, let me see if I have it in my notes here.
It was about 30 Chinese and 30 Indians that were caught down in the Tucson sector of the Arizona border, and the 30 Chinese were all bailed out. I mean, I didn't even realize you could bail an illegal immigrant out of jail, but they were bailed out.
By
$40,000
a piece.
A piece.
A piece. Okay, so 30 Chinese bailed out by a New York law firm at $40,000 a piece. Who does that? Well, what's that all about?
Well, They were bailed out by Chinese, but there is a connection to probably 2 New York law firms, and we're trying to get to the bottom of this. But there's 2 New York law firms that have a connection to bailing these people out there.
Do they do this regularly, or is this a select group?
I'm digging into it more now.
You know, you say that there's the sleeper cells. Can you explain, General, the Bubba Effect? You know what the Bubba Effect is, don't you?
Well, I'm from North Carolina, so I know who Bubba is. But,
okay, it was described to me by some former members of Special Ops as something that the government was concerned about, and that is something bad happens.
Yeah.
And Bubba says, "Oh, it's these Muslims," and he goes shoots an Indian who's not Muslim. He's wearing a headdress, and it just, you know, it's a nightmare. The government comes down. Let's just even say he was Muslim. He comes down, the government comes down to arrest him, and when the government gets there, then all the other Bubbas stand around and say, "Wait a minute. You're the people that allowed this to happen. You've known this the whole time. We've been shouting and telling you. You're not arresting him, even though he's wrong. It's what's happening in Wall Street. It's what's happening in Greece right now. I saw it. I talked to the people there. I asked them, these people are burning down your streets in your country. This is the central bank. They're helping you go broke. Which one's worse?" They said they're both criminals. Yeah. That's the Bubba Effect. What happens in this country if there starts to be retaliations, and you're also going to have our own Nazi elements, people who don't like the Jews here? I mean, the Blaze just did a big story on all of the Nazi elements in Brooklyn. It's bad. What happens to us?
Glenn, I speak all over the country. There are groups all over this country that are expecting the exact scenario that you just talked about, because they come to me frequently and say, "When do we take up arms? When do we go to war?" And my answer is always the same: you don't. You don't. You prepare for the worst, but you don't take up arms against your government. But this is occurring all over. When something like this occurs, you are going to see these groups come out of
so how do we,
everywhere.
How do we prepare? I just did a monologue earlier today. Martin Luther King. You've got to be Martin Luther King. The pressure is, that's what this government wants. They want that pressure cooker to get people to rise up so they can clamp down.
Yeah.
How do we teach people? What do we teach people right now to do? Any takers on that one?
I always say be educated, be prepared. Be prepared for any contingency. That doesn't mean you're going to take to the streets and start firing and go Bubba, but be prepared. Be cognizant, know what's going on, and I think that's be involved, get involved, join grassroots activities, join GBTV, get involved, be aware, and at the end of the day, guys, and we talk about this a lot,
it's God.
God sits on the throne, man. God is in charge. Have faith, trust in God. As bad as it gets, He will provide.
The other thing is this: vote. Get in behind candidates that get it, that understand this.
Do you see a candidate out there that could solve this?
Well, I see candidates at, not necessarily at the presidential level, but I see candidates at the lower levels. Glenn, I think we're going to take America back from the ground up.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to do it in Washington, but if communities will get informed, as Erick said, if people will find out what's going on and get away from the mainstream media, get away from the television programs that tell you the same thing every time, the same ones that will not tell you about a guy trying to blow up the Capitol, you know, a 3-hour coverage, and then it's on to Whitney Houston. Get informed, but use other sources of information. This is a great source of information. This and the Blaze and other things. And there are other outlets that give you what's going on in America. Get informed first, and then get in behind candidates that understand this. Support them. Put your money behind them, your time behind them, and vote for them. If you don't vote, don't complain.
Thank God for the web, and I rue the day when there is government regulation over the web, because you know this gang now in the White House would love to do it.
Oh, they have to do it. Right. I mean, the FCC has said they're going to do it. They have to do it. If he's elected again, they will take control of the internet. They must, or their democratic revolution doesn't work. It's the only place where you can truly still say what needs to be said and let the market sort it all out.
And you'll see the fairness doctrine resurface too.
I think you'll see something much worse than the fairness doctrine, but I'm not exactly, you know, Mr. Happy Mouse. General, thank you very much. Eric, as always, thank you. We do have some good news, and it kind of goes off of what the General just said a minute ago, getting involved and the grassroots level. I think the General is right when he said we're going to take it back at the grassroots level. It's not going to happen at the presidential level. That's not the way you build anything lasting. It has to be built down at the bottom. That's where we'll build it. And I want to introduce you to somebody that you probably know that is doing just that and has a plan. Next.